Beloved, hear me today. There comes a moment in a person's life when the Spirit of God begins to stir something deep on the inside, something that refuses to settle for the limitations of the natural world. And right now, that moment is resting upon you. This is not an accident or coincidence. You're listening because heaven has aligned circumstances to bring you into a new awareness of supernatural provision. There is a reason your heart is open, your mind is alert, and your spirit is leaning in. Something in you knows that there is more, that God has something greater, that lack is not your destiny, and that divine supply is not just a concept, but a living reality waiting to manifest. What you're about to receive is not for everyone, not because God withholds it, but because not everyone is willing to believe beyond what they see. That's why I say don't tell just anyone. Some people will try to smother what God is igniting in you. Doubt is contagious, fear is loud, and unbelief has a way of disguising itself as wisdom. But you are stepping into a realm where faith is the currency and expectation is the open door. Listen closely, because this truth can transform your entire financial atmosphere. Money is not merely physical paper or digital numbers. Money is a resource that responds to spiritual laws just as surely as it responds to natural ones. Fear pushes it away. Desperation repels it. Anxiety blocks its flow, but faith-bold, unwavering faith draws provision like metal to a magnet. Faith is not passive. Faith speaks, faith commands, faith activates. When you lift your voice with confidence in God's word, you are not begging heaven to move. You are releasing what heaven already ordained. This supernatural does not react to emotion or panic. It reacts to authority. And you have been given authority through the Word, through the promises of God, and through the power of believing before seeing. You are not meant to live life chasing money, scraping by, or wondering where your next breakthrough will come from. You are called to operate from a place of spiritual dominion where you speak to the mountain of lack and expect it to move. There are unseen resources assigned to your life. There are doors waiting to open, opportunities waiting to be activated, and people waiting to bless you without even knowing why. But those things remain dormant until faith calls them forth. When you speak with conviction, heaven listens. Angels respond. Circumstances begin to shift. The atmosphere around your finances starts aligning with divine supply. This is why you must guard what you hear and guard what you say. Speak abundance, not struggle. Declare increase, not limitation. Expect favor, not decline. What you are entering into right now is a spiritual transaction, a moment where faith aligns with purpose, where belief opens the door for provision to flow in ways the natural mind cannot comprehend. You are standing on the edge of something miraculous, and the very act of hearing this with an open heart is the first step into supernatural supply. Money does not respond to fear, confusion, or desperation. Money responds to faith. The supernatural responds to faith. Heaven itself moves when a believer opens their mouth and speaks God's word with bold authority. You are not designed to chase money. You are designed to call it forth, command it, and expect it to manifest. This truth is not reserved for the spiritually elite or the exceptionally gifted. It is a principle woven into the fabric of God's kingdom, a law that operates the moment a believer chooses to speak with confidence rather than cry in uncertainty. Fear has a paralyzing grip, and when it takes hold, It shuts down creativity, vision, and clarity. A fearful heart cannot see opportunity, cannot recognize favor, and cannot discern the movement of God. Fear blinds, but faith illuminates. When faith rises up, suddenly doors that seemed sealed shut appear unlocked. Ideas that once felt impossible now seem attainable. The mind becomes clear, the spirit becomes steady, and the inner man stands tall with a sense of divine assurance. Desperation, on the other hand, creates noise in the soul. It makes a person frantic, rushed, and unstable. Desperation often drives people into poor decisions, quick fixes, and unnecessary stress, but faith brings stillness. Faith says, "Be quiet on the inside. God is working." Faith is not passive resignation. Faith is active confidence. It looks at lack and refuses to bow. It looks at bills and refuses to fear. It looks at the empty places and speaks abundance. Faith speaks because faith knows. Faith knows that provision is already established in the unseen realm. Faith knows that God is not improvising or scrambling to meet needs. Faith knows that the believer is not begging for scraps, but operating in a covenant that carries divine supply. Money moves toward the voice of a person who understands their spiritual authority. The world teaches that you must hustle nonstop, grind endlessly, push through exhaustion, and chase every opportunity as though one misstep will destroy everything. But the kingdom teaches something entirely different. The kingdom teaches that when you seek first God's ways, His order, His truth, His promises, provision follows you. Money follows purpose. Money follows obedience. Money follows faith. When your words align with God's truth, you create an environment where increase is attracted to you. Words are not empty. Words are spiritual containers that carry power. They carry expectation. They carry belief. They carry the force that shapes your reality. Heaven is not moved by complaints, nor is it stirred by panic. But when a believer stands firm and declares, "My God supplies all my needs," all of heaven acknowledges that declaration as a legal transaction. The spiritual realm recognizes authority. Angels recognize authority. Even lack recognizes authority. When you speak boldly, you remind the atmosphere who you belong to and what belongs to you. You shift out of the mindset of struggle and into the posture of dominion. You begin to operate from a place where you are no longer intimidated by financial pressure, but confident that every need has already been met. This is why faith must be your language, your posture, and your lifestyle. When faith becomes your default response, provision becomes your consistent companion right now. Prepare your spirit. Quiet everything around you. This is not a casual moment. This is a divine transaction. Heaven is ready. Angels are listening. Provision is already being released. There are moments when the natural world becomes silent and the supernatural world becomes active, and this is one of those moments. When the noise of daily life fades and your heart becomes still, you position yourself to hear the whisper of God and feel the movement of His provision. Spiritual sensitivity is not something that happens accidentally. It happens when you deliberately bring your mind, your emotions, and your expectations into alignment with faith. Preparation is not physical, it is internal. It is a shifting of focus, a turning of the heart, an opening of the spirit. When you quiet your surroundings, you are not simply making less noise. You are creating an atmosphere where heaven has your full attention. Too often people try to hear from God while carrying the weight of stress, fear, and frustration, but spiritual truth cannot be clearly received through a cluttered heart. A cluttered heart hears its own worries louder than God's promises. That is why stillness is so essential. Stillness is not weakness, stillness is strength. Stillness is the place where clarity flows, where faith rises, where revelation becomes sharp. Stillness says, Lord, I am here and I am listening. When your spirit becomes quiet, your faith becomes loud. And when your faith becomes loud, heaven responds. The supernatural does not operate on volume, it operates on alignment. A whisper of faith carries more weight in the spirit than a shout of fear. This is the moment where alignment begins. Heaven is ready. That means provision is not being created. It is being released. What you need already exists. What you're believing for is already prepared. The answer is not being formed. It's being delivered. Heaven is not catching up to your needs. Your needs are catching up to God's supply. When the Word says that God knows what you need before you ask, it means your breakthrough has been sitting in the warehouse of the supernatural long before you ever felt the weight of your situation. The only thing that stands between the unseen and the seen is your faith. Provision is ready. Increase is ready. Favor is ready. What God has spoken over your life is not pending approval. It is waiting for activation. Angels are listening. This is not poetic language. It is spiritual reality. Angels are assigned to minister to those who inherit salvation, and part of their ministry is responding to the word spoken in faith. They move at the sound of God's truth. They respond to declarations that align with heaven's agenda. When you speak doubt, angels cannot act. When you speak fear, angels stand still. But when you speak faith-filled words, when you declare abundance, when you command provision to come, angels are stirred into motion. They go forth to open doors, influence circumstances, bring opportunities, and guide resources toward you. Your words determine their movement, and your faith sets their assignment. Provision is already being released. Not tomorrow, not eventually, not someday now. The flow begins the moment you shift your expectation. The atmosphere around you starts to change. The spiritual dam holding back your increase begins to crack. What was delayed begins to accelerate. What was blocked begins to clear. In the Spirit, movement is already happening, and your heart is being positioned to receive what God has prepared. This is a holy moment, a sacred alignment, a spiritual unlocking, and the preparation happening inside you right now is the doorway through which provision begins to manifest. Now lift your hands and receive this. Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, I step into the flow of supernatural provision. I declare that money comes to me now unexpectedly, abundantly, and miraculously. I call forth opportunities, open doors, divine connections, and financial favor. I release my faith, and I command every resource assigned to my destiny to locate me without delay. I break the spirit of lack. I silence the voice of fear, and I receive the overflow that belongs to me. Let financial miracles appear in my hands, my accounts, my home, and my future. I believe it, I speak it, and I receive it now. When you speak words like these, you are not reciting a ritual or repeating empty sentences. You are activating a spiritual force that God Himself designed to respond to your faith. Prayer is not passive communication. It is a release of power. When you lift your hands, you are positioning your body in agreement with heaven. When you open your mouth, you are aligning your spirit with divine truth. Everything in the supernatural realm listens to the voice of faith. Your words become containers of authority, carrying spiritual weight that shapes the atmosphere around you. You are not begging God, you are declaring what He has already promised. You are not trying to convince heaven, you are stepping into what heaven has prepared long before you took your first breath. When you call forth opportunities, you are commanding the paths of your life to come into divine order. Opportunities that were hidden begin to reveal themselves. People who carry answers, resources, and connections begin to feel a pull toward you without understanding why. The doors that seemed locked begin to shift open. When you declare open doors, you are speaking into the unseen realm and demanding alignment with your God-given purpose. Closed doors do not intimidate faith. Faith speaks to them with boldness and watches them yield. When you call forth divine connections, you are summoning the individuals heaven has already assigned to assist, elevate, encourage, and accelerate your destiny. These are people who carry what you need and are drawn to what you carry. They show up at the right moment, with the right resources, in the right environment. When you release your faith into the atmosphere, resources begin to move. Money is not simply currency. It is a tool that responds to the spiritual laws God established. When you command every resource assigned to your destiny to locate you, you are giving a spiritual order that must be obeyed. There are resources with your name on them. Ideas, opportunities, financial breakthroughs, promotions, unexpected blessings. They do not float aimlessly, they move in response to your faith-filled words. Lack loses power when confronted by a believer who understands their authority. Fear is silenced when you speak from your identity in God rather than from the pressure of circumstances. Breaking the spirit of lack is not just a moment of prayer. It is a shift in identity. When you declare overflow, you are rejecting the mindset of scarcity. You are stepping into a position where you expect abundance, not as a luxury, but as your covenant right. When you ask for financial miracles to appear in your hands, in your accounts, in your home, and in your future, you are acknowledging that God is not limited by natural systems. He can move through unexpected sources, unusual channels, and unconventional means. Your declaration becomes a spiritual magnet, drawing divine provision into every area of your life. And when you say, "I believe it, I speak it, and I receive it," now you seal your prayer with the authority of faith. You shift from asking into receiving. You step from hope into manifestation. You activate the flow of supernatural provision that has been waiting for your agreement. Hold that for a moment. Feel that shift. That's not emotion. That's not imagination. That is the supernatural responding to your faith. Something begins to move the instant you step out of the natural and lean fully into what God has spoken. When your spirit reaches a place of pure agreement with heaven, there is a weight, a presence, a stirring that cannot be explained by human logic. It is the quiet awareness that something somewhere has already changed on your behalf. You may not see it yet, but you can feel the atmosphere bending. You can sense the alignment. It is the deep inner knowing that the spiritual world has taken notice of your words and has begun to shift things in your favor. This shift isn't loud. It isn't dramatic in appearance. It is subtle, yet unmistakably powerful. It may feel like a heaviness lifting, a pressure easing, or a calm washing over you. It may feel like a spark in your chest, or a sense of clarity clearing the fog from your mind. These sensations are not random. They are signs that your faith has made contact with heaven's supply. The supernatural responds instantly, even if the natural world seems slow to catch up. The moment faith is released, spiritual movement begins. Angels are dispatched, obstacles begin to weaken, resistance starts to crumble, paths begin to open. It is a holy shift, a divine interaction that takes place the moment you dare to believe. Don't mistake stillness for inactivity. In the natural realm, nothing may look different yet. The bills might still be on the table, the bank account may still reflect the same numbers, and the opportunities may still seem unchanged. But in the Spirit, the atmosphere has already rearranged itself. What was blocked a moment ago has begun to open. What was delayed has begun to accelerate. What was hidden has begun to reveal itself. Provision does not start when you see it. Provision starts when you believe it. Manifestation is simply the final stage of what faith has already set in motion. This shift also marks the moment your mind begins to align with possibility rather than limitation. Fear loses its grip when faith steps into the room. The internal noise quiets, not because the circumstances have changed yet, but because your spirit recognizes that the outcome has already been decided in your favor. Faith has a voice that speaks louder than fear, even when whispered. Faith has a presence that steadies the soul. Faith has a force that pushes back against every lie of lack and every shadow of doubt. When you feel this shift, it means heaven has heard you, responded to you, and begun working through you. It is important to be aware of this inner movement because this awareness strengthens your expectation. Expectation is the bridge between prayer and manifestation. When you sense that shift, your expectation rises because you know God is not ignoring you, delaying you, or leaving your situation untouched. You know that things are happening behind the scenes, beyond your sight, but fully within God's control. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, think differently. You stop watching the world for confirmation and start watching the Spirit for instruction. You stop doubting and start anticipating. You stop rehearsing problems and begin rehearsing promises. This shift is heaven affirming your authority. It is the spiritual realm acknowledging your words. It is the invisible world responding to the power of your declaration. It is the supernatural aligning itself with your faith-filled expectation. It is the moment when your spirit and God's provision meet, when belief becomes the catalyst for breakthrough, and when your atmosphere transforms into fertile ground for miracles. Don't explain this to doubters. Don't justify this to people who only believe what they can see. This kind of blessing is for believers who understand that faith is a force real, powerful, creative, alive. Not everyone will understand what you're stepping into, and that's all right. Faith is not meant to be validated by those who have never practiced it. Some people live their entire lives bound by what their eyes can observe, what their hands can touch, and what their minds can calculate. They trust only what fits into the limits of logic and reason. But you are operating in a different realm, now a realm where the unseen shapes the seen, where the invisible world governs the visible one. Trying to explain spiritual movement to a natural mind will only invite confusion and discouragement. Doubters will question your confidence. They will challenge your declarations. They will point to current circumstances as if those circumstances have the authority to override the promises of God. But a person without spiritual understanding cannot grasp spiritual realities. They may hear your words, but they cannot perceive the realm you are speaking from. They may observe your actions, but they cannot discern what is happening beneath the surface. When they hear you talk about supernatural provision or financial miracles, they filter your words through their own limitations. They evaluate spiritual truths through natural restrictions, and that will always lead them to misunderstand what God is doing in you. This is why you must guard your faith carefully. Faith is delicate when exposed to unbelief, just as a seed is vulnerable when exposed to harsh weather. You protect what God has given you by choosing who you share it with. Some conversations are not worth having. Some explanations are not worth giving. Faith thrives in environments of agreement, expectation, and spiritual alignment. It weakens in environments of skepticism and small thinking. When you begin to walk in supernatural provision, you must surround yourself with voices that speak life, not limitation. You must stay close to those who understand the ways of God, who know how to believe, how to declare, how to expect, and how to stand firm even when the evidence has not yet appeared. Not everyone is ready to witness a miracle, because miracles defy the boundaries people place around their lives. When you talk about money appearing through unusual channels, favor showing up unexpectedly, or opportunities accelerating without human explanation, some will laugh, mock, criticize, or dismiss you. They will speak from a place of fear disguised as logic, but you are moving beyond that. You are stepping into a dimension where faith is the force that shifts reality. You are operating in the same spiritual laws that brought abundance to those who believed before you. These laws do not change based on someone else's opinion. They do not weaken because someone else cannot comprehend them. Faith is not democratic. Its power is not determined by how many people agree with you. Faith works because it is aligned with God, not with the approval of people. The ones who live by sight will always try to pull you back into their world of limitation. They will warn you, caution you, and urge you to be realistic, unaware that their version of realism is shaped by fear. But you know something they do not. The invisible realm is more real and more powerful than the physical realm. The physical world is temporary. The spiritual world is eternal. What you are believing for is already complete in the Spirit. You are not asking for something uncertain. You are receiving something prepared. This is why doubters cannot have access to your process. They have not trained themselves to recognize the movement of God. They cannot perceive the signals of breakthrough. They do not understand that faith is not guessing, it is knowing. Faith is not hoping something might happen, it is believing something already has happened. Remain firm in this truth, protect what God is doing in you, guard the atmosphere of your heart, keep your faith untouched by the opinions of those who cannot see beyond the natural realm. The blessing that is unfolding in your life requires an environment of belief, expectation, and spiritual sensitivity. Not everyone is ready for that, and that is exactly why you must move forward without explaining, defending, or apologizing for the supernatural provision you are stepping into.